Hey there, Castle Law crew and Chicagoland investors. It's been a little bit of time since we've reached out to you with some value-add content. Today, I've got a very good friend of mine, Noel Christopher, who has spent a lot of time in the Chicagoland market, both sourcing properties for national hedge funds, as well as being involved in property management. Noel, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Gary.
So Noel is the big dog at Renter's Warehouse. Renter's Warehouse is actually the largest national platform for property management in the United States, I believe. Isn't that correct?
So we're the largest third-party single-family property management company, meaning that we manage everything corporately. We're not a franchise any longer, which is how we started, was a franchise originally.
Okay, and so for those of my investors that are watching, and for anyone for that matter, a lot of people can really spend a lot of time focusing on sourcing properties, exit strategy, but that if this is like an Oreo cookie, that in between of actually managing and making sure that there's a good return on your investment, making sure the rent comes in on time, making sure the property's maintained. That's where I see oftentimes mistakes are made and losses occur because people just start trying to do things on their own and they don't have a professional team behind us. So it seems to me that's kind of where Renter's Warehouse is filling that void for a lot of my customers and investors. Would that be a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. Whether, property management on any buy and hold strategy is your most important aspect because, anybody can buy, you can figure out how to get the rehab done. Although in Chicago, that's obviously pretty difficult task as well. But having a capable property management company backing you that can give you the level of service that you need is paramount. And it comes down to a lot of different factors, whether you're using our company or somebody else. I give a lot of people advice on what they should be looking for in a property manager because the level of service typically is pretty low. And there's a lot of companies like ourselves and others who are trying to raise that level of service.
And when we talk about property management being about communication, how does Renter's Warehouse go about keeping their clients informed of what's taking place with their properties? I mean, most of my clients don't do real estate as a full-time venture. They're people who are trying to build a legacy worth leaving, a life worth leading, and basically a career worth having where they have residual income when they decide to retire. Why is that communication aspect so important?
Well, the communication is important. So to backtrack a little bit, in property management or in owning a single-family rental or any kind of a rental, there's a couple aspects that are biggest issues. One is communication. The other is communication about repairs and maintenance. The other is communication about your tenants. The other is communication about how quickly you're leasing the property. It all comes down to that communication, and there's different aspects within that. And so, to give a little bit of an example, we manage about 23,000 homes for 13,000 investors. So it's mostly small investors who need that high level of communication, who really want to know what's going on. They may not have the expertise to make certain decisions that need to be made, and they rely on the property manager to make those decisions. So that how we communicate is very important. We've gone from a lot of different iterations of starting out with a major property management software that we've now morphed into doing working with Salesforce and using the tools that Salesforce has to communicate and the different add-ons and the open API and the different ways you can manage the workflows, even for different customers as we, how we manage a property for a mom and pop investor that owns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes is way different than we manage for a guy who owns 200, 300, or 1,000 homes. So we needed a platform that could be malleable for each kind of investor. And so how we communicate is everything from the tenant experience and how they communicate issues with us, because that's really important in keeping that tenant happy. And then how we communicate that to the owner, everything from hey, there's a repair that's needed. This is the cost. This is what it means. This is why we need to get this done now, because you can always get things done for less, but they might take more time. And keeping that tenant happy is the single most important aspect of owning that investment, because if you have a happy tenant, they're going to take care of the house. They're going to renew their lease. You're not going to have to replace them. They're going to pay their rents. And in property management, it's really, what have you done for me lately? You can have a happy tenant or a happy owner today, but something happens tomorrow and they're unhappy. So we're constantly fighting that battle to make sure we're serving them in the way that need to be served.
So I don't know if this is quite sinking in for people who are listening, but the reason that we want to have Noel on and talking about property management is this value add proposition where my clients, and for any investor, if I don't put you in touch with people who can help you maximize your investments and you don't make money, that's not good for me. So from a shameless perspective, I want to promote the best people in the industry for my clients. In the analogy that I think about here, Noel, is, the last repair that I ever do, or my wife was after me for 10 years about creating a will. My office was creating wills for everybody else. Yet for my own personal estate plan, I put it off because I was too busy working on other things. So for an individual that wants to manage their own property, the timeliness of response rate to your tenants makes the tenant unhappy. When the tenant's unhappy, they don't pay rent. You may not realize that the tenant hasn't paid till the 20th of the month, or sometimes I have clients, call me every day that say, boy, the tenant hasn't paid for 6 months. I want him out tomorrow. We can always slow down that process, but unfortunately in Chicago, especially with evictions, we can't ever speed up that process. And where I see Renters Warehouse comes in is through having that back end support. This is simply a business decision when on the first of the month, rent hasn't come in. By a few days after, I'm sure your team's going into action and sending out 5-day notices and making sure that the tenants are happy. So you're getting out in front of this. So the return on their investment in you just yields massive, massive results.
Yeah, and it's also important to partner with the right external partners like yourselves that handle those issues, because how we communicate as well with our vendors, how we communicate with their attorney partners, all of those things are very important in how that process is set up. And it's, the thing that I caution people, it's not, there's that old analogy, do you get the best service for the cheapest price, all that kind of stuff. We figured out a way to scale and an ability to charge less than most, but where you don't want to skimp is on your repairs and on your tenants and making sure those things are handled. So sometimes there's sticker shock. Sometimes you've bought a property in an area that you get a bad tenant in there and it's going to cost you a little money today, but you need to handle that situation today so that you don't have those issues going down the road. And it snowballs. If you have a bad tenant in there and you're not taking care of that tenant and you have some repairs that maybe cost a few $100s extra than you think they should, well, you need to get those things taken care of, and your return over many years will be exponentially higher if you take care of these issues now and really keep on top of your place.
That's a great point. For people who are watching, here's Noel's information. Noel's got a whole team in Chicago, and if you reach out to Noel or send him an email, he'll put you in touch with the right people that can onboard you with Renters Warehouse. Noel's national, so he'll obviously speak to you, but he's got a whole team of people that are going to actually be kind of the boots on the ground, so to speak. So when you reach out to Noel, don't think that Noel is passing you off to someone else. He's actually just passing you off to the right person.
Exactly.
So Noel, you were a real estate broker in your prior life, actually here in Chicago. And I think that gives you some unique perspective on why property management is so important. So how what was the evolution of you from real estate broker to leading this national firm that does property management?
So I actually started out in commercial real estate in the early 2000s in Chicago, and before that I was a sales trainer for Tom Hopkins. For those of you who know who Tom Hopkins is, he was a sales trainer back in the day. So I used to travel around the country giving sales training seminars for Tom Hopkins people. And I started in commercial real estate in Chicago. And when things were hot in the middle 2000s, 2004, 3, 4, 5, I started working in investment real estate. The bottom obviously fell out of everything, and I continued in investment real estate and working with investors, helping them get hard money loans, buying a house, rehabbing it, getting them a refinance into a traditional Fannie Mae investment loan, and then just churning and burning, that kind of stuff. Did that for a while, and as the market started to change, I started working with institutional investors like Invitation Homes, for example, and really started ramping up what we were doing. We bought thousands of homes for investors from 2012 to 2015, and that really what put me as an expert in the SFR space, in the single family rental space, in the small multifamily, and I really dove deep into that space nationally. And back in 2015, I moved out to Colorado, started working with Investa Building and Rent Range, and that's morphed into working with another private equity group that acquired Renters Warehouse. And now we're doing similarly what I was doing at a brokerage a while back, is we're acquiring other brokerages, we're expanding a national platform, and the idea is that it's a very fractured marketplace. As the single-family rental space is being institutionalized and there's more opportunities to invest, the need for service industry, standard of service, a higher standard of service, a higher level of service, is a much greater need. So ourselves and a couple other companies are really starting to consolidate in the property management space. And now, you can have investors that say, hey, I live in Chicago, I want to invest in another market, or I live in California and I want to invest in Chicago, and there's services in place that you can have the property managed. You can have somebody find you a home, like the guys at Click Invest, for example. They can find you a place that has a good upside. There's all kinds of different services that are coming out there, and so that level of service is really, really rising, and it's all part of the space being institutionalized.
So, it's interesting because I didn't know this about you, Noel, but our actual evolution is identical. I call myself an involuntarily retired commercial development attorney. I was representing all big box, going out to the international conference of shopping centers out in Vegas every year.
I was there.
Yeah, we were there together. I'm sure we were in some of the same bars. So, it's interesting. Same thing. And this is really important for you investors out there that are involved in residential real estate and being able to work with somebody who's a top expert like Noel, because so many people work with people that are in the regular residential real estate industry. And one of the competitive advantages that I think that Castle Law and I have in aligning ourselves with people who have a similar background to Noel is when you come out of the commercial world, really, whether you're doing single family residential or retail office or regular retail space, it's identical. We're looking at numbers, we're looking at returns, we're looking at everything. So, I know, Noel, coming out of commercial, is we're very arrogant people, and we think, boy, getting into the single family, we're really muddying ourselves up, and boy, we really don't want to do this stuff. But really, there's a huge advantage because if you take 100 realtors, 100 property managers, 100 attorneys, if they do regular residential real estate, they don't know investment real estate. So when you're going out and looking for a property management company that manages homeowners associations, or if you're looking for an attorney that does regular residential real estate transactions, or perhaps most importantly, a realtor. 99% of realtors don't understand investment real estate. So aligning yourselves with people that understand that it doesn't matter what that house looks like. Biggest mistake I ever made was a house in Homewood, and it had a flat roof garage. And I looked at this house and I'm like, this is the ugliest house in the world. Guess what? When I bought that house, when I was buying residential real estate, I made more money on that house than I made on any other real estate acquisition. And it's because I was working with people like Noel who said, Gary, you're not going to live there. Close your eyes and look at the numbers. So that's the kind of value add that Noel and his team bring. For some reason, we were having all sorts of technical difficulties when we started. So my slides aren't working again here, Noel. So I had some more information that I wanted to provide to my clients. But what's the value? What's the real value proposition of Renters Warehouse? What distinguishes you? Why is it that so many people like myself recommend Renters Warehouse over other property management companies?
So I think that's a loaded question too, because you want to look at this for every property manager. Some of the things that we look at is that, look, our value proposition is that we've scaled, we figured out a way to scale. We are offering a consistent level of service across all of our markets. Now, that doesn't benefit somebody who just owns houses in Chicago, but what that means is that we've created processes and efficiencies so that our team on the ground can focus on managing the properties, and they don't have to do all the things that your typical property manager has to do. They have to go back and submit invoices. They have to figure out the accounting. They've got to also collect rent. We're doing all of those things, but we have that corporate support back in Minnesota where our corporate office is that handles all the back office, lets our folks on the ground focus on business development, focus on managing that property, keeping our customers happy, getting out to inspections, just your typical property management functions, as well as going out in the market and being evangelists for our company. So that is a big benefit. And also, we manage for these 13,000 investors. That's great. We also manage for some larger institutional funds that require us to give a different level of service. And the functions and the processes that we're putting in place for these larger investors start to trickle down into our smaller investors. And that's really where you start to benefit from an asset class being institutionalized. Or you could say the rising tide lifts all boats, whatever analogy you want to use. Creating these processes and getting them into the hands and those efficiencies into the hands of the smaller investors is the same thing that's happening with financing right now. The same things are happening with acquisitions and underwriting and being able to identify properties. All of those things are helping those smaller investors. So it starts to give you that competitive advantage. A lot of people talk about how there may be a little bit of a downturn or it's this big debate. Well, there's a lot of sophisticated investors that are ready to scoop up properties when they hit a certain level. In order to compete with those people, you need to work with the same guys who are servicing them because they're going to have those same efficiencies. And that's across the board. I mean, we're not involved in real estate sales. We're not involved in construction. We go out and find the best platforms and vendors to use, and we create our efficiencies. So that's just my take on all of that.
I'm gonna end with this. First of all, thank you. I know you're a really, really, really busy guy. You're down in Florida speaking at an event. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and speak to my clients. People ask me every day, hey, or I have conversations and they say, I can save money by managing my own property. I can save money by not using an attorney on the purchase. And I have this conversation with people every day. There's almost all activities that can make us money or save us money. What people who are sophisticated investors and people who become highly wealthy individuals, they focus their attention on the highest ROI activities, and they outsource the rest. So it's not a matter of whether or not you can save $50 per door or whatever the number is because you're managing your own properties. The question is, how much effort and time does that take you? And can you take that effort and time and scale it in a different area to make you money? There goes my slides. So there's
I'm controlling them, by the way.
Oh,
so
are you?
I saw. I realized I could control your slides.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, just ending with that. And Noel, any other insights before we end here?
Yeah, I think that for us, it's not about should everybody just use a renter's warehouse. It is educating and enabling investors to get the right level of service that they need. And so any property manager you're looking at, understand their processes, understand what happens, is it a one-man show? Is everything rely on one guy who's doing everything? What happens if that guy goes on vacation or something happens, he gets sick or something, or he or she gets sick or something happens to them? Make sure that they have processes in place to handle the ebbs and flows of property management. Everybody's wanting to get more doors to manage. Well, what happens when they hit 200 doors and they're at 100 an hour? What happens when they hit 400? Do they have the processes and efficiencies and platforms in place to manage your houses? Because it is difficult to switch, and one inefficiency in a process can cost you as an investor multiples on your ROI. And it's really important to understand who you're working with and how they operate.
And then last, and I know I'm a little longer than I like to go with these, but tell me about that owner portal, because that is really a really cool tool.
Yeah, so we're, most property management platforms have owner portals. We're currently using one of the major platforms that we're actually switching off of. The owner portal and how that communication happens, the more that you can, and I always say this, enable and educate people to self-help themselves. So if you have enough information that an owner can log on and see everything that's going on, and it reduces the amount of calls that have to come in, whether that's from an owner or a tenant into the company, that's going to make them more efficient, and that's going to increase your investor ROI. So when you're wanting to call that property manager every day to try to get them to get answers because you can't find those answers, it just makes the whole process more inefficient. So we're building out our owner portal. That what we currently have works great, but we're building out something more robust where you have all of the information that you need and all of the data that you need to be able to understand what's going on in real time with your property. And that's important because this is a big deal. It's a big investment, and without communication and understanding what's happening, you're going to start blowing somebody up on their phone, and that just causes everything to slow down. And so you could be the guy that is trying to get answers and somebody else is doing the same thing. So we like to enable our people to self-help themselves and see what's happening. And that reduces the number of calls, which makes things a lot better.
Well, thanks for spending some time with me today. Next time Noel's in the Chicagoland area and speaking at an event, I'll make sure that everybody who signs up for the platform here, which if you're watching this, you have signed up, you'll get an email. Noel's a wealth of knowledge. Having the opportunity to meet him and listen to him, I know I've learned. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next webinar. Thanks, Noel.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Really appreciate it.